My greatest fear in life was that I wouldn't be impressive. And if I wasn't impressive, then I would have no purpose. And if I had no purpose, I would be nothing. And if I was nothing, my soul would die. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Own It Show. I'm your host, Justin Roethlingshoefer. And if you're new here, I just want to welcome you. It's so awesome to be able to do shows like this. It's so great to be able to just have a platform that I can share with you guys and help empower you, equip you, and educate you on how to take ownership of your health. And when we talk about health, we talk about mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. It's everything. It's all integrated, because if we start to disintegrate it, that's when we ourselves start to experience disintegration. And as many errors as I've made over the course of my life, and as many difficulties as I've had, and many hard seasons, and I've talked about a lot of them, I just want to try to give you some insight and glean off of some of my education, some of my experience, but mostly about the revelation that I've had from the Lord and how we've been able to steward our health differently. And today I want to really just get a little bit raw with you guys. And if today's episode really speaks to you, I would really just value you guys sharing it, being able to leave a review, and just share it with somebody that it'll serve, because I think the place that I'm going to go today is really going to speak to a lot of people, but also create a lot of freedom for others. And I just really encouraged you to share this with those that you love, and somebody that it could not just encourage them, but also give them a sense of hope today as well. My greatest fear in life was that I wouldn't be impressive. And if I wasn't impressive, then I would have no purpose. And if I had no purpose, I would be nothing. And if I was nothing, my soul would die. And I sat with that for years. And it showed up in how I strived every single day, and how I pushed, and how I tried to manipulate certain situations, and how I tried to push the truths to make myself look better and just to be accepted in certain rooms. And quite frankly, it cost me my health in a lot of ways, because I lived under this chronic stress state. I lived in this chronic space that wouldn't allow me to step in and be who I was actually called to be. And it wasn't until I had this revelation, and it was a 2-day lockdown session that I did in our home, where I just really just sat with God, and I just said, like, Lord, who do you want me to be? How can I heal? And I started to do a lot of deep, intentional healing. And what he spoke over me was just incredible, and it healed this. And it was actually that I was called to be nothing. And that if I could be nothing, he could make it something. And if he made it something, that would be impressive. And it was this paradoxical thinking. But the paradoxical thinking set me up to ultimately step into the world of Own It, step into the world of what is coming with Holy Health, step into the world of traveling with Brandon and Phil, and being able to influence some of the influencers in this world, and being able to lead the leaders. And I think that is what is so beautiful about this. And for today, I want to dive into the paradox of God's kingdom. And I'm really going to use the story of David when we talk about David and Goliath, because we all have Goliaths in our life. And for me, for a long time, the Goliath was my identity and the deepest fear that I had, which was that I would not be impressive. And whatever that Goliath is for you, it's not enough just to ask for healing of the Goliath, or to go and take on the Goliath. But in the story of David, the requirement, not the suggestion of health, is so critical and paramount to that. And I want to give you from that, thus the why of also Own It, and what we've done, and why we say certain things we do. And when you hear things like own your different, and live different, and different wins, why this is so close to my heart. And so when I talk about this fear of being nothing, and for me it goes back so many years ago. I mean, even deeper into when I was playing hockey still, and cut from every team you could ever imagine. And the coolest part about it, as I say cool, the funny part was that, like, it was never for quote unquote a lack of talent. It was because of my appearance, and that my appearance got me overlooked because I wasn't big enough. I didn't give them the feel that I would cover all the net. And so they would take somebody who was not a great character person, wasn't as good of a locker room guy, and ultimately wasn't as consistent. And about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks into the season, there would be always regret. But there was this fear that built in me of being irrelevant, this fear of failure and being overlooked simply for my appearance. So many men and women are haunted by this little whisper that you'll never be enough, that you'll never be impressive, that you'll fade into irrelevance. And by fading into irrelevance, you will be nothing and your soul will die. And this performance-driven culture feeds this fear. It's the performance-driven culture of metrics like revenues and likes and followers and status. And these performance metrics tell us, oh no, we're good, we're succeeding, we're seen. But yet, because of that, because of these performance-driven metrics, we continue to bring all of this other baggage into how we operate on a daily basis, and thus keeps us from actually not only realizing the joy that we should have, but also the breakthroughs that exist on the other side and realizing the real health of doing things. Because I was asked this question the other day. If you want to be a multiplier of a leader of your business, a multiplier of a leader of your family, a multiplier of a leader of your church, a multiplier of a leader of your leadership team, whatever that is, you have to ask yourself the question, what are you multiplying? Are you multiplying health, or are you multiplying something that's dysfunctional? Are you multiplying addiction? Are you multiplying something that's actually bleeding inside of you? And the paradox, again, is that God doesn't despise nothingness. In fact, he actually requires it. And he said spiritual richness exists in being empty. Blessed are the poor in spirit. It's like, if I can be empty, it's then the point that we've hit where now we can lay down everything, and we can lay down our need to be impressive, our need to be validated, our need to be irrelevant, and ultimately he can do truly something eternal, something that can last, and something that can be multiplied in a healthy way. And that is impressive. And so I want to take you through David's story, because this is really where it comes to life, I think, in a big, big way. And if you walk through 1 Samuel 16, basically Samuel goes to Jesse's house, and everyone looks at Eliab. He's tall and strong, and so Jesse's house is where all of his kids are. He's tall and strong, and he's got these people that are wanting to take on Goliath, the people who are coming to try to steal their land. And when Eliab comes, the man goes, or God says to the man, Samuel goes to Jesse's house. And in doing this, the reason that they go there is this is where all his kids are. They're all big, they're all strong, they're all smart, they're all intelligent. They all have something which would ultimately lead them to say, oh, I guess these guys should be who leads us in battle. But God says man doesn't look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And my gosh, that resonates. Because how many of us are trying to get the six-pack abs and the muscles just so that we can be validated, just so we can be said that we are something, that we're significant, that we can prove people wrong who made fun of us because we were fat, or we were anorexic, or we had some other eating disorder, we had some other dysmorphia that had going on during our body type, or how we were looking at a younger age. We were called a nerd, we were called an outsider, we were called an outcast, and that was the way that we were going to prove ourselves right. But rather, what does it look like to actually be healthy? What does it look like to be healthy on the inside out? What does it look like to be healthy because your heart is healthy? And the real thing about this was that David wasn't even invited to the lineup. David wasn't even there. He was out in the field tending to the sheep, being nothing, a lowly shepherd, overlooked, nothing special. But here's what nobody knew. David was out there preparing. David was out there worshiping, singing songs to the Lord. David was out there doing sprints up and down the hill tending to the sheep. David was out there making sure that he was getting ready. David was out there slinging rocks with his sling. David was out there killing bears and lions to prepare, or pardon me, to protect the sheep, his flock. And that's who God anointed. That's who God called, the shepherd boy who became king. And so David's nothingness, his willingness to be nothing, became the very reason that God could use him. But it wasn't just because he was willing to be nothing. It just wasn't because he had a spirit that was on fire. He prepared himself physically because David was strong. He was physically fit. He was physically able to carry it. And too many of us want to take on these Goliaths in our life. We want to go and chase whatever God called us to do. We want to go and build the business. We want to go and build the church. We want to go and build the family. We say, hey, I'm ready. I'm waiting. I'm growing impatient. I want my business to grow faster. I want my church to grow faster. I want my leadership team to grow faster. I want my family to grow faster. But yet, we don't have the energy to carry what it is that we already have built. We've burned ourselves out with the size of our business that it is today. And God calls us to steward our bodies because purpose requires energy, resilience, and leading by example, so that those we're multiplying can be multiplied in a healthy way, not in a dysregulation and down-putting way. Because staying healthy is not just advised, but it's required. And if you want to be David in your generation, you can't neglect the temple he gave you. And so many of us want to be spiritually rich and we want to be spiritually sound, or we want to be fit for vanity purposes to prove somebody wrong at the end because we don't want to go back to the way that we were. But I'm here just to tell you that if you heal from the inside out, this is where you're going to be able to change everything. Because it was because of the preparation work that David did. It was because he was spiritually rich and physically able that he was asked to come in and ultimately go to war and be the savior in which it was. And the Goliath that's waiting in your life doesn't just need you to be spiritually rich, doesn't just need you to be physically fit, doesn't just need you to be emotionally stable, doesn't just need you to be mentally strong. He needs you to be all four of those things. And without doing those all four together, there will be a block, there will be a resistance, and there will be a gap in you being able to realize your true potential. And this is why we bring it all together. Because obedience is the hinge that swings the door to blessing. And before you sit here and say, well, Justin, what do I do to actually get there? You have to go back to obedience. Because David, again, was obedient to God's call. And he became a blessing to a nation. He was the one that was called to go and do this. In fact, even when he went to the king wanted to give him his armor, but he said, no, I just want to go in with what I'm comfortable with, what I've used these entire times, with what I've been training in. Because what I've trained in, I'm ready to use. What I'm trained in, I'm ready and able to go with. But so many of us, again, how many of us, the moment that we start to forego, we're like, you know what? No, I'm going to go for the hormone therapy. You know what? I'm going to go for the new biohack. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go for the new tech tool that's going to get me there. No, go with the person who can take you to the promised land and lead you to where you were meant to go, because that is what we're looking for. Because when you stop trying to be impressive, when you stop trying to have all the things, when you stop trying to have it all figured out, when you stop trying to say, oh yeah, no, my health is great, but yet on the inside you're deteriorating because your ego won't let you get there. When you stop trying to be impressive and start being obedient to what God's called you to, that's when blessing follows. If you haven't listened to the podcast with Brandon Lake that I did and Phil Wickham about 8 weeks ago, about 8 episodes back, go listen to it. Because Brandon says something so profound. He said, I had surrendered everything in my life to God. I had surrendered my business. I had surrendered my music. I had surrendered my songwriting. I had surrendered my family. I had surrendered my finances. I had surrendered my tours. I had surrendered the people in my life. But I had yet to surrender my health. And that was the thing that was holding him back from breakthrough. That was the thing that was holding him back from reaching the new levels. And it was not until he was obedient and stepped into what it is that we have been asking him to do that all of a sudden everything has exponentially catapulted, because now he has the capacity to carry the calling that's on his life. And the same is true for you. And I don't know what your Goliath is. I don't know what you're wanting to take on, but that's what's asking you. That's what's waiting for you. Because when you neglect your body, you destroy and you disobey the call to steward the temple. The temple is not the 4 walls of the church that you walk into on a Sunday. The temple is looking you back in the mirror. The temple is when you look at your son or daughter. The temple is when you look at your wife or husband. The temple is when you look at the people around you. That's the church. And when you discipline your rhythms, nourishment, and recovery, obedience flows and blessing follows. Clarity, longevity, and energy to lead. Because obedience requires sacrifice. Romans 12:1-2. Use your body as a living sacrifice. It's not that we were asked to break down. It was actually that we were asked to live in obedience. And obedience requires sacrifice, doing things that we don't want to do, doing things that are inconvenient, doing things that are uncommon, doing things that are unsettling sometimes. But it opens the floodgates to blessing. And this is why it comes back to what our mission is at Own It. It's why we use these sayings, live different, because the world's way of living leads to burnout, sickness, and irrelevance. But David didn't fit into the world's mode, the world's mold. He lived differently. And so we're called to live different. And when we live different, we literally are called up. And living differently requires us to be nothing. And when we're nothing, it's impressive. And when we own your different, when we own our weaknesses, when we own our nothingness, when we own our journey, whether it's poor or whether it's great, and we don't hide it, and we own it, God can redeem it. But until then, we just continually hide behind it. We give excuses for it, and we walk in the patterns of the world. And when we live different, when we own our different, that's when he can ultimately make nothing something. And that's impressive. So we can be the example. Be the example. Leaders lead by example, not theory. Health is not just personal, it's the legacy that you start to build everything upon. Your kids are watching, your church is watching, your business is watching, the leaders in your business are watching, your family is watching, and they will follow what you model. And so do you want to model something of health, or do you want to model something of dysfunction? Because what you multiply is what you give. And anything multiplied by dysfunction equals more dysfunction. Anything multiplied by poor health leads to more poor health. That's why Own It exists, not just to help you lose weight or get fit, not just to create new habits and rhythms in your body, but to create Davids in this generation, to create people who are equipped to carry the calling that's on their life and do so with capacity, do so with greatness. Leaders who are strong, humble, healthy, and obedient, that can take this calling and multiply in a magnified way so that you can reach the people that God has called you to, but do so in a way that leads to health, that leads to vibrance, that leads to energy, that leads to longevity, that leads to all the things that you desire. But it starts with living in a rhythm that was created for you. Because God doesn't need you to be impressive. He doesn't need you to have the six-pack abs. He doesn't need you to have the rippling muscles. He doesn't need you to have the supplement stack and the cold plunges and the hot and the saunas and post them on Instagram and say he does all of these. He needs you to be obedient. But the cool part is when you're obedient, the obedience often leads to habits and rhythms and systems that generate that same outcome and yet give you the six-pack abs and give you the muscles and give you the influence and give you the people who look at you and go, my gosh, I want what you have. I want the energy that you have. And when we're willing to be nothing, he will make it into something. And when he makes it into something, that changes everything. And that's what's available to you. As my fear of being nothing held me back from breakthrough, God's paradox and David's story and the obedience of being willing to be nothing is actually why he could make it something. And that became impressive. And that's why Own It exists. And so you need to stop chasing the impressiveness, and you need to stop chasing the desire to be something great and to have this image of health, but rather start to actually show it. Start to actually be it. Start chasing obedience. Be nothing so he can make it something. And that is how you truly own it. We know success is different, so own your different, and we'll see you next week.